Welcome into an all-new edition of Daily Faceoff Live, Thursday, December 19th. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Big Willie style in the chat. Good morning, my favorite channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. The show is brought to you by Bet365. Download the app, use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Tyler Yaremchuk, Frank Saravalli with you. Frank, 6 days till the big day. Are you done your Christmas shopping?
I am. I've been done for a while. I'm an early orderer.
I let it slip this year. I got a couple of things I still need to do, and every day I drive home and I see the turnoff to West Edmonton Mall, and I'm like, I should not be lazy today, and I've been putting it off. I've been bad.
It's a tough place to want to drive into given the season.
Yeah, it's not good. Anyways, speaking of the season, it is almost the holiday roster freeze in the NHL. That bad boy will hit tonight. And yesterday, we saw a couple of teams jump in on the action and beat the deadline. We are going to talk about that throughout the show. Steven Ellis is going to swing by. We also have our Dominion Lending Center's poll question up now in the YouTube, so you can have your say out of all the teams that made a move yesterday, or at least the 4 teams that made the big moves yesterday. Who do you think made out the best? And Frank, let's dig into things and start with the Kaapo Kakko trade. The Rangers moving on from the 2019 second overall pick. And let's maybe start, we'll talk about Kakko and the Kraken in a second. Let's start with what the Rangers got back here in Will Borgen and a couple of draft picks as well. Do you like the return, and what do you make of the decision to move on from Kakko?
I like the decision and I like the return. I just think Will Borgen is the perfect fit for this team right now. We know that it's been a mess in their own end, and they've had some egregious turnovers, shoddy defensive play for a while, and they get a player who's just a steady Eddie. Will Borgen was in demand not too long ago on our trade targets board. He's not a sexy or flashy player. He's not going to wow you with any one part of his game, but he's reliable. He's got some size. He's got better than average feet. And I think he's a guy that can help quiet down the noise in the Rangers' own end, which is exactly what they needed at this exact moment in time. Now, the word time is interesting because the first question that people want to ask is, was Kaapo Kakko traded because of his comments, biting comments this week in response to a healthy scratch from Peter Laviolette? The answer to that is no. But it's not unrelated. It just hastened the decision that was ultimately going to be coming for Kakko, which is this is a player that is now in his 6th NHL season. He's played 330 games. He's a pending restricted free agent who only has 1 year left until becoming a full-fledged unrestricted free agent. So the Rangers had to make a decision at some point soon. Are we extending this guy or are we moving on? And given the inconsistent nature of his game and his production, plus really only 1 season to write home about, I think it makes sense to move on.
Yeah, and honestly, I agree with you. And where the Rangers are at right now, sitting outside of a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference, they need help defending. And if the cost is, again, let's view this even in a vacuum and ignore the long-term side of it. Viewed in a vacuum, this is you trading a guy who the Rangers would view as an unreliable third liner, and you're getting a good defenseman for him. It checks a box for me. And it also gives them back some draft pick capital. And when you look at where they're at, again, needing to probably add at some point, Pat, I think we have the list of picks that they have available to them. Again, they just got a 3rd round pick here, but like they didn't have a lot of draft pick capital going into these moves that they've made over the last month. And if they're going to get aggressive at some point and add and try to turn this around and get into the playoffs this year, you need draft pick capital to do that. So that's another side of this deal. I know it's small, a 3rd and a 6th, but you can still use those picks.
Yeah, it's not a ton, but I think Borgen is an interesting piece, and I think the draft capital could help. You never know. It might help get a deal over the finish line. And look, that brings us to an easy transition of what do the Kraken get out of this? Look, they take a flyer, and I get why it makes sense for them to do it. They're a team that's looking for more juice, more offense, more skill, more potential star power. It's easy to sell to your fan base. Hey, we got the number 2 overall pick from 5 years ago. This is an intriguing guy to add to our lineup. I just think we know enough now about Kaapo Kakko to know that he's really not an impact player to add to your team. Does a new change of scenery, does opportunity, whatever else that comes with that, could that change it? Yes. I just think we know enough now to know that he's a middle 6 forward in the NHL.
Yeah, and I mean, I saw some people be like, "What if this works out for them the way Laine worked out for Montreal?" And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Patrick Laine actually did the damn thing in his career. Like he has put up 40 goals in a season. Like Kaapo Kakko has put up 40 points.
And
Once.
Laine's had a couple weeks in Montreal. Like we're like, what are we talking about here?
Exactly. I saw that getting thrown around a bit yesterday. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's walk before we run here with Kaapo Kakko. Do I think this is a good bet for the Kraken? Sure. I think at the stage they're at, kind of stuck in hockey's purgatory, do you want to just, trade Borgen at the deadline for a second round pick? Yeah, I mean, I guess you could, but like you said, this move excites your fan base. There is some upside with it. If Kakko can realistically, can he be a 20-25 goal guy for you for the next few years? Yeah, maybe, but even that I think is like the max of his upside at this point. Again, like you said, only 23. Sure, 6 years in the league. We kind of know at some point, don't we?
Yes, and I think even saying he can be a consistent 20 goal scorer is a reach. I'm not saying he can't do it. Of course he can, but his career high is 18. So he kind of sort of did it one time. I think he has 4 goals this year, 3 goals this year. Like we're just not seeing it. And not for nothing, he's been given opportunity in New York and played with good players. Johnny Lazarus pointed out this morning on Morning Cup of Hockey, he spent a season playing with Artemi Panarin and Ryan Strome. He spent a season on the kid line with Alexis Lafreniere and Philip Hedl. Like he's had chances. He has. And I don't think you could have him exit New York and say they didn't give every opportunity to make this work. If you want to go back and unring the bell and say he shouldn't have been in the NHL at 18, that's a different conversation. But he is what he is.
Yeah, you can't go back and change that fact or anything like that. This season and last season, actually, it's a weird coincidence, averaging exactly 13 minutes and 17 seconds time on ice. So again, it's not like he was averaging 11 minutes. Like he was getting, yes, middle 6, bottom 6 minutes, sure. But you pointed out a couple of instances in the past where it didn't work. Like there was a reason Kaapo Kakko was playing where he was in the lineup. It's not like they brought him up at 18, stapled him to the fourth line with Sam Carrick, and were like, that sucks. Like, why won't he play better here? He got chances. So again, I understand the risk or the gamble from Ron Francis, and I actually like it because again, with where they're at, having to sell things to the fan base, need some upside. But
not for nothing, I just want to point this out, and it's a different regime, so it's not necessarily an indictment on Chris Drury, but the Rangers had a tough run there. Kaapo Kakko at 2 in 2019, Vitaly Kravtsov at 9 in 2018, and Elias Anderson at 7 in 2017. 3 top 10 picks. None of them were good picks.
No, none of them were.
And you have to consider them in the grand scheme of what the draft class is and was. You make the selection. What else was available? I think all 3 of them are whiffs.
Yeah, they absolutely were. Like people talk about the way the Rangers rebuilt or retooled and didn't have this long, painful, dragging out process that we see some other teams get stuck into. But like they got Artemi Panarin in free agency. Adam Fox basically forced his way there through a couple of trades. And then you nailed Igor Shesterkin in whatever it was, the 5th round. Like the idea that the Rangers, and I know it is, again, a previous regime, the idea that they did something right, I think they kind of more so just got a little bit lucky and then benefited from the fact that they're the New York Rangers with being able to sign Panarin.
Potentially. Yeah. I mean, you presented a good case. It's just, they did make some smart trades and some smart decisions on free agents.
Yeah. All right. Don't need to get down that whole rabbit hole. Let's continue talking about the deals that have happened in the last 24 hours, Frank. And a pair of defensemen got swapped. The Nashville Predators trading Alexander Carrier to his home province. The Quebec City native is going to the Habs, and going back the other way is Justin Barron. Let's start with what the Habs think they're getting in Carrier, a 28-year-old who had just signed an extension in Nashville not that long ago. Not a lot of miles on him for being 28. He's under 300 games played, I believe, and he's got 2 more years at $3.75 million. Why did a rebuilding team in Montreal get older and more expensive? What's the thinking here from the Habs?
Well, the thought process is they need more support defensively is 1. And 2, they want to do that without having to bring up players from Laval in order to make that happen. So they want to keep those guys, the younger guys, getting as much seasoning as possible. And they also wanted to strengthen their team. And they bring in Carrier, who I think can check a lot of those boxes. First off, he mentioned that this was on La Poche Blue that this is his childhood dream. So that's exciting. From a Preds perspective, I think it's a little bit more curious. So now if you want to lay out the timeline here, last year, Alex Carrier makes it through deadline day on our trade targets board. He had been in demand. A bunch of teams had called. He's just a well-rounded, not great at any one thing, but really good at everything defenseman. A little bit on the smaller side, sub 6 foot. He's 5'11". And that's one concern moving forward for the Canadians is some size on their blue line. But from the Preds perspective, they keep him through the deadline. They wait all the way until July 1st before reaching a 3-year deal with him, as you mentioned. They get that deal done, and then you trade him in December. So it is curious, but what I'll say is a couple things. Justin Barron, they bring in who's younger. They trade a proven commodity for a question mark. Justin Barron has not established himself yet as a legit NHL defenseman, a full season NHL defenseman. He's a right shot guy who's younger that does have a little bit more size. That is interesting. But to me, the big win in this and a big reason why I'm watching the clock until the trade freeze hits on Thursday night at midnight Eastern is they got cap space. $2.6 additional million in cap space. They're now above 4. The thought process around the league is that the Preds are bringing in this cap space to then go out and acquire a center. Will Barry Trotz be able to pull that off before the freeze happens? I'm not sure. They've been in conversation with a bunch of teams about a bunch of different things, so it's hard to pinpoint exactly what that is. But the decision to move on from Carrier now, to me, is most definitely connected to something else.
Wow. Man, I'm just trying to quickly, and I whatever, maybe it's not the most entertaining thing. I'm thinking of all the centers we've talked about as guys who have maybe been on the market over the last month and who could maybe be a fit there. Do you think they're looking for more of a stopgap, or are they maybe looking to make a home run swing? We've talked about Cousins a lot on this show. You've brought up the name Josh Norris in Ottawa. Is it that level, or is it $3-4 million veteran to just hold them over?
I think any and all of those things have been on the table. Yeah. I'd be surprised if it's Norris, but I think it's a big risk to take on that shoulder. But I mean, stranger things have happened.
Yeah.
I think they talked to the Flyers about Morgan Frost, for instance, but there's not anything happening with that right now. I think they've examined the market, some younger guys, some guys that need a change of scenery, some older guys. I think they've been all over it.
It'll be interesting. If I set the line, shout out Bet365 at 1.5 for more trades before midnight tonight. Where are you going? I know I did half on DFO Rundown today. It was an easy over, but 2, Frank.
Probably saying no.
Okay. So maybe one. Again, keep it glued, dailyfaceoff.com. Turn on your tweet notifications for Frank as well, so you get the news, boom, right when it hits. Let's play a little pick'em before we get to Steven Ellis. Frank, I got a couple of questions for you away from the trade side of things, but the Amazon series has been renewed for a second season, or greenlit for a second season. It will feature Brady Tkachuk, but I wanted to ask you if you could pick one player from around the league to also star in this series. Whose personality would you like to see on display? And I'll let you think about it because I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. And I'll say
Seth Jarvis is one.
Okay.
I'd like to see. I'd like not a day in the life, but I'd love to see them follow around someone who's consistently scrapping in the mix, fighting.
Oh.
I'd love to peel back the layer on what it's like for some of these guys from a mental toll and perspective, because I can tell you, going back 15 years ago when fighting was a bigger deal than it is now, and it happened way more frequently. Every time I'd walk in the locker room, the question would be from the heavyweight, hey, is that other guy playing tonight? They'd want to know, hey, is he in the lineup? Do I have to get ready? And I think there's a lot of sleep loss over that because you're bare knuckle fighting in front of 20,000 people. And I just think it's powerful. And there also happen to be some of the best guys in the league. So I don't know, just throwing it out there. Curtis McDermott. So, I mean, I know they're not going to pick those guys, but pick someone that has a different something else to bring to the table. So I'll throw you Seth Jarvis and anyone that drops the gloves on any occasion.
A couple of good answers in the chat. We got a Marchand, we got a Marcus Foligno, which I found interesting. Fleury in his farewell season potentially would be cool. Sharma said Tom Wilson.
Tom Wilson would be a great one that connects a lot of those dots and also plays on a good team that has a chance to do something.
Mm-hmm. My answer was going to be, and again, they won't go this direction, but the hockey nerd in me would love follow a guy who's constantly up and down from the AHL, NHL. Maybe a guy who you can look at and be like, hey, he's probably going to go on waivers a few times this year. I'd love to see what goes into like the uncertainty and having to move all that and go back and forth. Like, I think that'd be kind of cool. Again, very nerdy of me. The casual hockey fan does not give a shit.
It'd also be an expensive thing to film with all the travel.
That's a good point as well. All right, my second pick'em for you before we get to our friend Steven Ellis. Frank, if the playoffs ended today, these would be the matchups in both the East and West. And what I want you to pick, if you could lock in one of these now and guarantee that we get that matchup in round one of the playoffs, which one of these potential ones would be most intriguing to you?
I'm not signing up for Edmonton, LA again. That would be 4 years in a row. So Utah is in a playoff spot today?
By points percentage, yes.
Okay, good to know. I would sign up for Florida, Boston. I think the hate there is real. I think those have been a couple knockdown, drag out matchups. And there's also just been like the idea that the Panthers knocked them off the year that they had the best regular season ever. Like Marchand, Tkachuk, I don't know. Sign me up for that every day. And there's a lot to pick from here, though. You've got the Chychrun Jensen trade. You've got Stefan Nason going up against the Carolina Hurricanes, his former team, and also Brett Pesce. The history between the Lightning and Leafs and them not being able to get over the hump. An all-Canadian matchup in Winnipeg, Vancouver. I don't know. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah, that's what kind of sparked it. Is I was sitting there today, just whatever, half daydreaming, being like, that'd be good, that'd be good, that'd be good. Like, damn, some potentially really good matchups. And yeah, TA says, man, Oilers LA, what is that, 4th year in a row? Yeah, it would be 4th season in a row, but that's the system the NHL kind of wanted when they took things this way. All right, on that note, let's continue along to our big segment. Talk a little World Juniors in the next wave. It's brought to you by Fountain Tire. You and your family's safety is important. Whether you need new tires, maybe your engine has a rattle, stop in a Fountain Tire today and they'll sort you out. And they are all about trusted, reliable service, which is why they'll take pictures of your vehicle and let you know which parts are A-okay, which ones need some attention, which ones can even wait a little bit longer. Top tier quality service at Fountain Tire. Check them out online at fountaintire.com. It's almost World Junior time, which means it is a great time to have Steven Ellis on the program with the next wave. And Steven, we're starting to see rosters get finalized. So let's start with Canada. Any big surprises from the final group that Canada ended up going with?
Yeah, so I drove to Ottawa to go check out a couple of days of the camp. And I think the only guy that, if we're going just based off of how they performed at camp, the only player that kind of really surprised me was Beckett Seneca, the Anaheim Ducks prospect. He played his way onto this camp team after getting 14 points, and I think it was either 3 or 4 games. Like, unbelievable numbers. Totally deserving to be in the final team, and I thought he looked great at camp. He was hitting everybody. He was scoring. He was creating opportunities, but he didn't make it. It did seem like some scouts thought that maybe he wasn't going to make it because he was kind of almost viewed as a pity pick that was brought at the end, but whatever. In terms of
you mean because they got it wrong to begin with and he should have been there from the start? The Hockey Canada arrogant pity pick? Is that what that is?
Yes, exactly. I know a lot of people are talking about Andrew Cristal and the stuff he's doing in the WHL. Look, he didn't do anything at camp. I watched every minute that he played on the ice, did not impress enough, and it was kind of like a Jagger Firkers from last year where obviously puts up a ton of points, ton of skill, but was going to be probably having to fight for a bottom 6 role. He doesn't play that type of hockey, and he was on the list out.
When you look at this Team Canada roster, what are the strengths and weaknesses for this year's group?
I think this is a group that can go out there and kind of score from anywhere. Luca Pinelli is looking like a potential 4th liner on this team. He could get 50 goals in the OHL this year. Now, that was the most surprising pick there. At the same time, his coach is Dave Cameron, the coach of the Canadian World Junior team. So there was that part. But I think the fact that he's going to sit out or going to be playing deep in the lineup, we might not see Carson Rakoff get a ton of opportunities, and he's a 50-goal scorer. This is a team that should be able to have 4 full lines that can put the puck in the net. And I think that's going to be very dangerous to beat.
So the U.S. does things a little bit differently. As you know, they kind of, instead of picking their team so early, they leave it till a bit later. And when you also got a chance to check out Team USA's camp, who stood out to you?
It's James Higgins, and he's the one of the top prospects for the 2025 NHL draft. Of the guys that are, 2025 prospects in this tournament, I think he's going to have the biggest role. And part of that is he plays such a big role already at Boston College, playing with Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault. That's gonna be a line in this tournament. Again, watching Higgins for the first time since the U18s in person a couple days ago, the one thing I noticed, he looks stronger. This is someone who was compared to Jack Hughes for all the same reasons, whether it be, okay, yep, great hockey mind, super smart, but not physically strong. And that was a big knock against Higgins. It doesn't feel like that's as big of an issue right now. Watching him snipe shots over and over again on the power play drill, that's a guy that didn't do that in the last couple of years. He was more trying to pass to Cole Eiserman or whoever else was there to put the pucks in the net. This is a guy I could see actually leading the team in goal scoring because his shot is at another level that I don't think we've seen. So there's a lot of people thinking he's falling in the NHL draft. I don't think he's number one right now, but this tournament can kind of help push him back into that spot.
Yeah, it's always going to be interesting to see how he handles the increased eyeballs and attention too. That said, and probably not a huge surprise, because if you're seeing this at the Four Nations and Olympic level, it's probably also true here by nature of development. But does Team USA have far and away the best goalies in this tournament?
They've got the best goalie. Is it the best three? I'm not convinced, mostly because Sam Hildebrand is kind of a weird pick for that third goalie, but Trey Augustine is the best goalie in this tournament. And I've got a story coming up about him tomorrow. Just a player, when you look at his numbers, he hasn't actually allowed or hasn't given up 10 losses in a season basically since any stats have tracked him. Like, that's an incredible thing. No matter what year it is, he's just putting on incredible performances. He's not going to set the record for most starts at the World Juniors for the Americans, but he is going to probably hit number 2, passing Jack Campbell. And that's because this is a guy that from a young age, you could see how smart he is, how poised in the net. Nothing seems to bother him. He's not a big goalie, but he's extremely athletic. And there's a reason why he's one of the top goalie prospects in the world. Detroit already has Sebastian Cossa. I know a lot of people think Trey Augustine is more skilled. We'll see what kind of happens a long run there, but the Americans definitely have the number 1 best goalie.
Let's move along, or let's wrap up with Sweden. You have them as kind of your third pre-medal favorites. What puts them in that spot, and give us a player to watch?
They're just a difficult team to beat. They've got 3 really good goaltenders. They've got probably one of the better defensive units, not super flashy, not super skilled, but they play defense. And that's what you kind of hope for from your defenseman. Looking at Axel Sandin Pellikka, great in this tournament last year. He has the opportunity to become the first 2-time defenseman of the tournament winner. That's incredible. Tom Wielander, the Vancouver Canucks prospect, is very good too. Theo Lindstein was great. And then you look up a front, and they got so many good scoring options, including David Edstrom, who was recently involved in the Askarov trade, Victor Eklund, who is one of the top prospects for this year's draft, potentially a top 5 player. Otto Stenberg was really good last year, a St. Louis prospect. So they've got really good depth at every position, maybe not as much as Canada or the United States, but enough to compete for a medal.
Should be interesting. We're going to be doing a full preview on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. That'll drop a little bit later on, or I should say next week. Steven, appreciate your time. Get back to wrapping those Christmas presents.
Thanks, guys.
When we were doing our first 4 topics, I can see Steven in his preview window. He had the Christmas box on his lap. He was working away with the wrapping paper. It is that time of year. Let's go along to our hashtag AskDFO inbox question. Frank, we got a couple here that I think are interesting. Jeremiah always asks good questions. He wants to know if Ron Francis's job is in jeopardy if the Kraken don't make the playoffs. His earlier question was, is his job on the line this year? I don't view this Kakko deal as any sort of like a panic trade, though.
No, but I do think that they're starting to take a long, hard look at the path of this franchise and where they're heading. And then my bold prediction from October was one of the 32 that I put out there, is that Ron Francis will be promoted to president, and Jason Botterill, their assistant GM, will take over as the GM to try and change the look. I think the Seattle Kraken are on the clock. And I know that sounds funny to say because this hasn't happened yet, but it's only a matter of time until Seattle gets an NBA team. And it was already an NBA first market. There just hasn't been that much to get excited about with this Kraken team. They don't have star players. There isn't one on the way. And it's not the NBA in that you absolutely have to have a star player to be competitive, but from an interest perspective, from a chance to win a Stanley Cup, like all those things, they are a fine team. They're not obviously one of the worst teams in the league, and they're not a playoff team. They're stuck in that middle that I just don't see how they find their way out of that without being ultra aggressive. And that's just never been in Ron Francis's dictionary. Is just go look at the way he ran his teams in Carolina. What we're seeing in Seattle is really a lot of the same.
Adam is in. He's a Red Wings fan. Quickly, he wants to know if the Wings are still in on the trade market after not getting Jacob Trouba.
So the Wings were never really in on Jacob Trouba.
Okay.
That's an important thing to point out. I think they should be. I think they should find a way to try and improve that defense. And I can't figure out the Red Wings in general, because this season obviously hasn't been anywhere near good enough. The Sens have kind of, at least in the short term, passed you by. And the Wings haven't really answered any of their problems. And they're not making a coaching change, or they haven't. What is Steve Yzerman doing? What's going on behind the scenes? Is he cooking something up to try and change the fortune of this team? I haven't seen any of it.
Crow is in. Tyler, who does your eyebrows? Looking sharp as a steak knife going into the holidays. These are au naturel, buddy. You better believe it. Okay.
All right.
Let's go to our daily bets. Brought to you by Bet365. Use the promo code NATION when you download the app. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Couple of plays this evening. How about a maybe under the radar, not quite household name, Luke Evangelista, plus 185 to go 3+ shots on net his last 5 games. 6 shots, 5 shots, 1 shot, 0 shots, but then 4. So he's hit it in 3 of 5, and you're getting plus 185 on the payout here. He's been ripping the puck as of late. I like that price tag on him to keep going. And then one straight up bet tonight. I'm actually staying in that game. I know Nashville is at home. That's probably why this is priced the way it is. But you have one team with only 2 wins in their last 10, one team with only 2 losses in their last 10. Give me the Penguins, who are red hot heading into this hockey game, 7-2-1 in their last 10. That brings us to garbage time. And actually, before we do that, Frank, we got the results of our Dominion Lending Center's poll question. Is your mortgage up for renewal? Lock in the best rates by speaking with one of their mortgage experts. Visit dominionlending.ca. And the Nashville Predators not getting a lot of love on Twitter. It is the Seattle Kraken who came out first on our poll, which was which team made the best deal yesterday. And actually, the YouTube was the same. 55% said Seattle Kraken. The Predators did not get a single vote. Agree or disagree with the poll?
Disagree. I like what the Rangers did. I told you from the beginning, I like Will Borgen. I think he's underrated, and I think he's what this team needs right now for a guy that you weren't keeping anyway.
For garbage time today, Frank, we talked about Alexander Carrier, a dream of his to go play for his hometown or home province Montreal Canadiens. We also saw the flip side of the trade world yesterday with P.O. Joseph getting traded back to the Pittsburgh Penguins, him and his brother Matthew on Instagram having their last dinner together with the little crying emoji on there. The brothers getting to play together for the first time in their NHL careers, and 6 days before Christmas, they get split up.
Yeah, 6 days before Christmas and 11, 12 days before New Year's Eve and the Winter Classic for the St. Louis Blues. So that would have been a nice special memory. And look, that's the tough part. Not everyone can be the Sedins where you play your whole career together. There's a lot of brothers that have been linked up and then split up, and never easy to do. But P.O. Joseph, the Penguins, they need bodies. They're down 3 defensemen via injury, don't have much by way of call-ups. Waiver wire isn't super attractive. Bring back a guy that had been there for a couple years and played in their system.
There you go. That is a wrap on today's edition of the show. Everybody in the YouTube, great stuff as always. Yesterday, I asked you to push us to 20,000 subs, and you did it. We hit the 20K mark. What's next? 30? Anyways, appreciate all your support. Pat Puff, great job in the production chair today. Steven Ellis, Frank Saravalli, great analysis. We'll be back tomorrow on Friday with another edition of the show. Chat with you all at noon Eastern. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content, from daily live shows with Frank Saravalli to analysis from former NHLers to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.